So, hi everybody, welcome to both the Jens Pateo and MEG'S channels. We're doing both a show both on our channels, and this is something we will do weekly. And we will start off with a very interesting one, the astrology of Europe. Welcome. I would say welcome, but it's both on our channels. Maybe Meg, you want to start off with we're doing a trip in Canada, a retreat in Canada. Maybe you want to say something a little bit about that before we start.
Yeah, so we're very excited to be hosting a soulful summer solstice retreat weekend in Algonquin Provincial Park, Ontario, Canada. We're very grateful for everyone that's signed up so far. We've got people internationally from all over the world that's going to be coming, and there are still some spaces available. So Jens and I like to host these spiritual retreats around the solstice and equinox points in special places. And this is a poster that our friend Sunny made. Love it, with the Sasquatch on there. Algonquin Park in Northern Ontario is known for its Sasquatch activity. So we're going to be celebrating the summer solstice together, doing earthing, grounding, meditation, sound healing, campfires, moose excursions, all kinds of fun, spiritual, and wellness activities with like-hearted people from all over the world. If you go to megmoonbeam.com, you can see the whole itinerary for our retreat, and you can also sign up. At the bottom, there's a link. You can sign up directly with the Northern Edge Retreat Center. So super, super excited about it.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. It's really when you come together as a group, and we've done a few of these now. We've done a trip to England. We'll be doing more trips in the future. We've did one retreat in Canada. Now there's a second retreat in Canada, and it's just so amazing, in this age of digital and everything online, to get together with people and to it's to build up the energy. It's really it's a special occasion, especially in Algonquin Park. I'm really looking forward to it. So let's start off with the subject of today, and
We
it's
almost
a
forgot.
really
Sorry, Yancy, we almost
go ahead.
forgot to share that your book is now out in English on Amazon for anybody that might be interested in checking it out.
Yes, thank you. Well, I was going to mention my book a little bit later, but so let's talk first. Let's talk about the European Union, and let's talk first a little bit about the history. And I want to talk a little bit about the history and the hidden forces behind the scenes before I give Meg the stage to talk all about the astrology, the transits, and what's in store for Europe. But let me first go over the history, and Meg always works with the birth chart of the European Union because that's where she places the transits on. And we've chosen there's only one date that's actually the birth date of the European Union, and that is the 1st of November 1993, if I am correct.
Mhm.
And this is actually the start of the European Union as the political entity. This is truly the date where the politicians put their signature on that treaty. Now there's a lot of treaties that came before that, and I want to highlight one before, for example, the Treaty of Paris, which created the European community, the European movement, the ECC, the EEC, the European Economic Community. That was like a precursor to that. But when we're talking about the EU, the EU as a political entity, the birth chart of the 1st of November of 1993 is the most important one because that when it was launched. And I remember, as a kid, there used to be borders between all the countries in Europe. So, whenever I went from, for example, with my parents from Belgium to Holland, because we lived pretty close to the border to a town called Sluis, I still regularly go there with Meg. Before 1993, we had to cross a border. There was like a little gate there, and there was like an officer there that checked the border. And in 1993, so that was the start of the European Union, those borders went away. And now it's been more than 30 years that those borders have been away. So that's why it's important to highlight that date. And so to talk a little bit before Meg goes into the astrology, to talk a little bit about the history and also talk about what I'm going to say now. I also talk really in depth about that in the book. Is that the European Union is supposedly started by some Europeans that were like visionaries and that wanted this European Union, but there's a whole backstory there. And the start of the European Union was actually with the Europe, something called the European movement. And oh, my screen is gone here. Just a sec, guys. So it was something with the European movement. And a guy named Joseph Rettinger was the person who started the European movement, and he was actually the spiritual father of the Bilderberg Group. Now, a lot of conspiracy theorists, will know that the Bilderberg Group is really a globalist organization that is really, kind of high up there, like, um, delivering the policy to the governments to follow. And so this Joseph Rettinger guy, he was actually connected to the Americans through the Council on Foreign Relations in America, which is kind of the semi-secret establishment of the U.S. And he also met David Rockefeller and stuff. So, which is one of those families that's really heavily involved also in the global power structure. The Rockefellers are involved into the World Health Organization. So, what was actually being discovered by a professor in Georgetown University was the true sphere of influence behind the European Union, and it's not started by Europeans. It's actually started by in the 50s and the 60s. It was funded and started by the CFR Rockefeller influence through Joseph Redinger. And actually the CIA funded it, and also the Rockefeller and Ford Foundation. So, and these politicians like Robert Schuman and Henry Spakenbel and Joseph Rettinger, who are supposedly the front people for this European movement, they were seen by the Americans as hired guns, and it all came out through these secret documents that this professor discovered. So there is actually, the European Union is a total globalist creation by these globalist Americans through their foundations, through the CIA. So that's really important to understand before we go on here, is that there is that elite influence, and of course conspiracy theorists will certainly know what I'm talking about. There is that elite influence in the European Union of these globalist organizations. So that being said, let's go on to the astrology. So I think you want to look at the transits first, Meg.
Yeah.
And here we see this is the treaty. So this is actually the treaty. You can see their handwritings there of the start of the European Union. So, so you want to go over the transits, Meg, or?
Yes, sure.
All right.
Yeah, so there's some very big transits currently happening for the European Union, which, of course, not every country in Europe is a part of the European Union. Are you aware, Yenzi, which countries are not? I know England is no longer in the European Union.
Yeah, of course. With Brexit, England is no longer in. But I'm not. I have to say, I don't know all the countries that are in it, and I also don't know all the countries that are not in it.
But am I correct in saying that most countries within Europe are a part of the European Union?
Yeah, of course, of course. Most countries within Europe, yeah, it's gotten quite big actually, and it's also encroaching towards Russia, which
Mm,
is which is kind of interesting because they broke that kind of pact that they had after World War II, where they say they wouldn't get too close to Russia. Now that's the big issue also with Ukraine, is that they want to have Ukraine in the EU, and
mm,
Russia doesn't want it, and quite rightly so, because that wasn't part of the deal, right? They don't want it to get too close.
right. Yeah. So there are multiple transits coming up over the coming months in particular. That's kind of what I'm focusing on in today's video. I think we might have to do a part 2 of this video, Astrology of Europe 2020 part 2, because there's just so many different transits. There's so many different moving parts as well. We're living in times where there's so much change and transformation happening all over the world, and in particular in Europe, right? And with the European Union. So what I'm seeing as a theme with the transits of the European Union is multiple transits over the coming months, indicating a potential for big shocks, surprises, and unexpected and destabilizing events. I would say that is the main thing out of several different things that I'm going to be sharing with you guys. We're in for some really big shocks. We're in for some unexpected events and destabilizing events. One of the biggest things that this chart is going through at the moment is the fact that the EU is a moon in Taurus, which, by the way, for those of you who don't know, the European Union is a Scorpio at a Scorpio degree with Mars and Pluto, the two rulers of Scorpio, exactly conjunct in the sign of Scorpio. So I believe that, these crazy globalist psychopaths, hopefully I can say that on our YouTube channel without getting deleted, they, Yenzi, as you know, they have astrologers that they pay and they work with. Okay. So everything is done through Well, we know they do dark arts. We won't go too into that because that'll definitely get us kicked off YouTube. But one of the things that they utilize is the art of astrology, which can be used for good. It can be used for bad as well. So that kind of goes with any sort of esoteric discipline. It can be used for good or bad. So, Scorpio is the sign that rules power and also control, and basically like domination and total control in shadow aspects. So when the European Union was formed, I think it's no coincidence that it happens to be during Scorpio season with the day, it was a Scorpio degree, November 1st, 1993, with the two rulers of Scorpio conjunct each other in their home signs of Scorpio. So it's all about the intention of the European Union is to control, it is to manipulate, and it is to have total power over the people. So that's what I'm reading astrologically as the intention of why this was created. Anything you want to comment on with that, Jens, before I go on? Does that resonate? Does that not resonate?
It resonates absolutely, and it's totally in line with the facts I shared just in the beginning here. Is that you can see it in the facts. I mean, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the CIA was behind this. It's a globalist thing. It's a globalist organization, and it has been set up by these elite families like the Rockefellers who want to control humanity. I mean, I'm not going to go deep into Rockefellers here, but I talk a lot about them in my book. And when you research these people, and for example, when you see what Anneke Lucas has been saying, we won't go too deep into that here today, because she was taken by Rockefeller as a child.
Mhm.
Um, we're not going to go deep into exactly what happened because, but so if you study that story, what she talks about, these these people are it's pretty dark. So no surprise there actually for me.
Mhm. Yeah. And we've got Blue Water in the chat. Excuse me, says, I still know when we in the Netherlands voted against the EU with 70%, and here we are. Very quietly, we were pushed into one Europe, even though we voted against. So I actually didn't know that. So this was something that was pushed on the people without their consent. Is that correct?
Yeah, I remember it. It was quite a few years ago, and there was like what they call, I don't know if the same word in English, a referendum. It's
Yeah.
probably the same word in English, yeah. And yeah, basically they asked the people, what do you think of the EU, and said like Blue Water says, 70% of the people chose not to have it, and still they didn't listen. So
Mhm.
it was non-binding actually. So
Mhm.
it shows that, and people forget so quickly because only that fact that they 70% of the people say no, and they just don't care. It shows
Right.
that it's not a democratic institution. But people forget so quickly, and you got so many people still pro the EU. It's just crazy.
Yeah, for sure. So even though Scorpio is, and I am a Scorpio, by the way, so as I'm saying this as a Scorpio, it is the sign that does rule the dark side and the, most darkest aspects of life. And people, places, things that are Scorpios go through death and rebirth and total transformation. So when an organization like the European Union is a Scorpio, it is something that is going to go through a death and a transformation. What the European Union started as in November 1st, 1993, and the intention of that is not going to be that forever moving forward. It will go through a death, and Scorpio tends to be dramatic deaths and rebirths and very intense processes. And I think that's kind of bubbling up in Europe at the moment. I personally haven't been in Europe since the end of January. But is that something, Jens? Do you feel that at all in Europe? Do you feel like there's this energy of intensity bubbling up to some sort of climax?
Well, I've just been back for a week in Europe, but actually I did a talk on last Sunday, and multiple people said to me that the energies were so heavy in the last weeks, and I was like, okay, I didn't notice because I was in Florida. It was sun and palm trees for me, but
Mhm.
I mean, it was really like three people independently came to me and said, man, the energies were so intense last week. So I guess there is something going on even now, yeah.
Yeah, so there's multiple very intense things that I want to share with you. One of them that is striking me the most is the fact that, and by the way, just to be clear, European Union is a sun in Scorpio. a Leo rising at a Leo degree, a sun in Scorpio at a Scorpio degree, and a moon in Taurus, 24 degrees, which is a Pisces degree. So right now, as we're filming this video in the current astrology, transit Uranus as of April 11th, 2025, that's when we're filming this Astrology of Europe video live, transit Uranus, where Uranus is in the current astrology, is at 25 degrees of Taurus. So the planet Uranus is conjunct the natal moon of the European Union. And in the chart of a country or an institution or a place, the moon represents the people. Okay, so the people of Europe. Uranus is the planet of instability, shocks, surprises. Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius and the age of Aquarius, waking up. So what I'll start with, which is positive news, is with Uranus conjunct the natal moon of the European Union, the people of the EU, and also, I'm getting the download as well, also people that work in the European Union itself, okay, are starting to wake up to what's really been going on. And when we use that word wake up, Jens's book, A World in Transition, really breaks that down, this power structure that we have been living in and going through. We've been living in this world where we have these elites in power that do not have our back. They do not have our higher interest. And we've been going through this process in the past over 2,000 years of a dark age of Pisces that we're now starting to wake up out of, that we live in this very unnatural controlling system that is trying to lead us into transhumanism. And so with Uranus conjunct the natal moon of the European Union, the positive is the people are waking up. And that's something for me as a Canadian living in Belgium the past few years. I've heard multiple different Belgian people saying that they're waking up. They're noticing a lot of other people wake up. Would you say that you've noticed that too, Yanzi?
Absolutely. And the COVID, I'm not going to say the word here on YouTube, but with the P word, endemic, um, really woke a lot of people up. Like, I woke 20 years ago in 2004, and back then in Belgium there was really nobody awake. I remember at university, being a student at bars, trying to talk to people about it. Have you heard about the New World Order? I said to them, when we were drinking beers, and nobody, and it was called the New World Order back then. It wasn't called the Great Reset.
Mm-hmm.
So and people didn't care, people didn't know, and really the big waking up, and it has been going on steady through the years. But the big waking up was, of course, the quote unquote health crisis we had 5 years ago already. That really woke a lot of people up, even people that I wouldn't have expected it from. So it's in Belgium a lot of people woke up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's continuing throughout all the countries that are currently under the European Union. So that's a positive that's going on. And this chart that I've got up here, you guys, this is a transit chart. So in the orange, we can see where the planets currently are, and the blue is the European Union birth chart placement. So Uranus, which has a zodiac revolution, if I'm remembering correctly, of around 80 years. So it takes around 80 years for Uranus to go through all the signs. Right now, at this moment, is exactly conjunct the natal moon of the European Union. So people waking up. Now, Uranus is at his most unstable position in the sign of Taurus, which he has currently been in since the year 2018. And Uranus doesn't like to be in Taurus because Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. It's about the future, innovation, moving forward, rebelliousness, change, and weirdness. And Taurus, as many of you know, is the sign of stability and comfort and security. And Taurus doesn't really like weird stuff. And Taurus doesn't like to be outside of its comfort zone. Uranus is all about getting outside of the comfort zone. So one of the main astrological reasons why things have felt so weird for the whole world is because we've been going through this Uranus and Taurus transit. We're going to be in that until 2026. Uranus will enter Gemini July of this year, but it won't be full on in Taurus until 2026. And Jens, it's very interesting that, Uranus rules protests, revolution, rebelliousness. Taurus is the land. Taurus is food. Taurus is cows. Taurus is farmers. And what have we seen happen in Europe? Well, Uranus has been within conjunction of the moon the past couple of years. Farmers protests, right? That really started in Europe compared to other places of the world. So that's been playing out. Protests that have to do with food, farmers, land production. I'm predicting that we are going to see more types of protests and revolution, in particular in regards to challenging the government. Okay. So we've got Uranus that rules protests and rebelliousness, conjunct the moon of the people. So people in Europe, and I think that's part of the reason why the energy maybe feels so intense and feels like it's bubbling up to something. The people are getting really fed up with the BS of what's been going on in Europe, of, the I don't know if mandates are the right words, but the regulations that the European Union has been putting through. And maybe, Yenzi, you can speak on that a little bit for people that aren't familiar with the EU. It's so important to look at this chart because there's actual regulations that the EU puts through that then affects all the countries under the European Union. Could you speak on that for people to understand that it actually affects the laws of the countries?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, you can compare it to the WHO. Like the WHO is a global organization, but during, the quote unquote health crisis of 5 years ago, all the countries, did the same mandates, the lockdowns, the masks. I mean, it was happening in Canada at the same time as it was happening in Europe. And that's because of the WHO. So the WHO is like the top. It's not the top of the pyramid, but it's high up on the pyramid, and it goes down to the countries that are actually below its umbrella. And it's the same thing with the EU, but then for the European Union. So it's the same principle. It gets decided on a higher portion of the pyramid, and then it trickles down to the government. So the governments are really not the top of the pyramid like people think. They're not the top of their own pyramid. I mean, they're their own pyramid, but they're within a bigger pyramid, which is this global architecture that wants to rule over humanity, of which the EU is part. And the EU lays down these mandates. And it's very interesting that you were talking about the farmers, because actually just last week I heard from my friend Andy, my best friend Andy, his family, his aunt are meat farmers, and they actually had to stop their meat farming business because of these CO2 carbon dioxide rules of the European Union, which really is bullying the farmers out of business. And so these people are now forced to stop their meat production business and to go fully into milk production. So they have to buy milk machines and all that stuff. And it's with a heavy heart they did it. And they also saw that there was less and less meat getting sold also on top of that, which is, the agenda against meat, the fake meat. Bill Gates, who is invested in Beyond Meat. I mean, eat the bugs from Klaus Schwab, all that thing. Klaus Schwab from World Economic Forum, which is headquartered in Switzerland, and stuff like that. So it's basically other agenda. So yeah, you were spot on there. With the farming thing, it's actually really going on, really happening in Europe, and it's a good thing that the farmers are protesting, because it's not over yet. And as I've heard from my friend, it's still in full swing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll continue to see these farmer protests going on, and I think we'll also see more protests, as likely with Uranus, which is the planet that rules technology. Okay, anything having to do with digital related things or technology. And you'll probably know more than me, Jens. I'm just reading the astrology. But Uranus on the natal moon of the EU can be the push towards a digital ID, the push towards transhumanism even stronger on the people in nefarious ways, because it's a Uranus in opposition to that Mars, Pluto, Mercury, Scorpio stellium in the chart. What's going on with that? Because I don't know what's going on with that right now. I know that the EU, we're talking about doing a digital ID. Do you know where that stands as of right now?
Yeah, they're actually the European digital identity has actually been ratified. I mean, it being introduced just like, I think it's a few months ago or a few weeks ago. It's pretty new. So they were talking about it for years, but now it's actually coming. So it's confirmed, it's coming, and it's of course digital, and it's also going to be tied to digital money. The European Central Bank is also talking about the digital euro. And one of the interesting things that I really want to mention that is very important here is that it came out in leaked documents in the Netherlands that this digital euro, this digital currency, will be programmable. And that's a really dangerous thing, because, for example, they can if you get money from the government, they can program that money. You can only, for example, use it on certain goods. So, for example, if you want to say, for example, I'm just saying something, you want to buy like meat with it, you can't buy meat with it. you want to buy alcohol or cigarettes with it, you can't. I'm not saying that alcohol or cigarettes are good, of course, but it's a big limit on freedom, that programmable money. So yeah, the money issue is also very big here in Europe. Maybe you can look into that too as you go into the chart.
Yeah, well, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And do you have any timeline information on that? Like when they're planning on starting to do that digital ID or digital euro?
The digital ID is actually being introduced now. It's being introduced now as we speak. They're rolling it out now, but the your digital currency, I think, is for it's in stages, and I've seen in those documents first stage is 2026, and then a bigger stage is coming in 2027.
Okay, so this makes a lot of sense. So would you say that it's looking like the digital ID, it's starting to get rolled out now, and this is something that they're going to try to push to implement over the summer and the rest of the year?
That might be the case. There might be differences in countries, right? Not every country follows the same, schedule. It's planned to come every year, but it's sometimes there's different timings in different countries.
Yeah. So we're definitely going to see, and it makes so much sense what you're saying, this push for the digital ID and the digital euro, which is Uranus in astrology, anything technology or digital related, starting to be pushed on the people. And the people are not going to be happy about this. And actually, I don't see this working in the long term at all. And I see this being one of the big things that's going to actually end up being the fall of the European Union. Because as more and more people are waking up in the EU to what's been really going on and the truther information and the alternative, more and more people the blinders are going to come off, the mind control is going to come off, and they're going to see that no, it's not healthy for us to be living with digital ID and, totally just digital money option and basically like a social credit score. I didn't know what you just said there about, the money will be programmable. So there's only certain things you can buy. This is not going to work in the long run. This is, if you guys take anything away from what I am saying today, what I'm sharing from my end, this is not going to work out in the long run. Okay. I really feel like the digital ID and the digital currency is going to get pushed out in Europe more intensely first compared to North America. And we are going to see in Europe really big protest and revolution when this happens, because many of the people are already starting to wake up, and it's going to be very, very intense. And it is important that we push back from this, because it's not just our generations, it's all future generations. Once we go down accepting a digital ID, it's very hard to get away with that, right? Look at what's going on now in China. For example, they're under a total enslavement system. We have, friends that we know that are from China, have lived in China, and they told us stories about it. Very hard once people are on a digital ID or social credit score system to get off of that, right? So good thing that the people are waking up. I think they're going to rise up against it. And I think while all of this is happening, there's also going to be, with Uranus in not just conjunct the natal moon of the European Union, but also in an opposition to the Scorpio stellium of the European Union. Shocking, Uranus is shocking, secrets, Pluto, and it's in the fourth house, which has to do with secrets, regarding the truth about the European Union. The past of it is going to be coming out into the forefront. So there's going to be, Europe is, I think, going to be very much in the spotlight, and it's going to be very dramatic. In particular, from May to June, which is, if I can just bring up this birth chart of the EU to show you guys again. Why I'm saying May to June, because on April 17th, 2025, the planet Mars is going to leave the sign of Cancer, where he's been for months, this past, I don't even know how many months we've been going through this Mars in Cancer, Mars retrograde transit. It's been not a great place for Mars. People have been very moody, conflictual. Mars is going to go into the sign of Leo, which is the rising sign of the European Union, which is actually better for the whole collective. People will physically be feeling more active, inspired, moving ahead. But Mars, transit Mars conjunct the rising of the European Union in Leo is going to be a drama show. And this is going to be within a strong degree orb from May 14th to June 4th. So I'm predicting that this time period between May 14th to June 4th is going to be very dramatic for the EU. We may see big protests during this time. We may see, Leo rules royal families, famous people, politicians, things being outed about them. We've just had, for those of you who may not have heard of it, Candace Owens, who's a journalist from North America, she's been outing the truth about Emmanuel Macron and Brigitte Macron, and just go over to her YouTube channel on her video series to see all about that. Absolutely wild. Did you see that whole video series that Candace did on Macron's?
I haven't watched it all yet. I should keep continue watching it, but again, it doesn't surprise me if if you've been studying what the elites are up to, and if you're into the conspiracy, then there's a lot of weird stuff going on. And with Macron, they've really tried to shut Candace down. I mean, they tried to shut. I know in France there were journalists already talking about it, and they shut these journalists down really hard. Broke into their house with the police. But of course, they can't shut up Candace Owens that easily because she's from another country and she speaks out. So yeah, it's basically coming out how she's like 30 years older, like the wife of Macron is like 30 years older, and she's might be transgender. It's really weird. I mean, it's really interesting to watch.
Yeah, very interesting to watch. So the European Union organization and the countries under Europe are going to be seen in conflict and drama from this period, May 14th to June 4th in particular. And there can be outing again of royal families, famous people, politicians. And also during this time, from May 26th to June 15th, transit Mars in an exact opposition to the natal Saturn of the European Union. Saturn rules governments, laws, regulation. So there can be conflict, anger, frustration, news coming out regarding maybe digital ID. That Saturn is in Aquarius at an Aquarius degree, 23 degrees in the EU charts. I think during this time, we will hear more of a development of, okay, what's going on with this digital ID trying to be imposed. We're going to see people's reactions to that as well. Also interesting that we've got transit Neptune, the planet Neptune, has recently entered the European Union's ninth house. So I'll show that to you guys here. It's been in the ninth house for a while, since Neptune's already been 29 degrees Pisces. But as of just less than 2 weeks ago, Neptune entered Aries in the ninth house of the European Union. Neptune rules things dissolving. The ninth house is foreign places, foreign people. So transit Neptune in the EU's ninth house can be the dissolving of foreign relationships. So interesting, allies that were once allies may not be allies anymore based on the craziness that's going on. We may see that between America and the European Union because there's a lot of disagreements between some of the things that are going on. We have President Trump really speaking, and JD Vance, among other people in the American government right now, really speaking out publicly against some of the unjustifiable things going on in Europe, the taking away people's freedom of speech, what's been going on with Marie Le Pen. So many people in America, which is considered to be an ally to Europe, really speaking out about that. So we could see possible some sort of dissolving of the relationship there, or a change in the relationship there as well. The ninth house also rules religion and religious places. And I really felt, as we were preparing for today's video intuitively, that there's going to be changes, big changes coming to the Vatican and outing what's been going on at the Vatican. We visited the Vatican just a couple years ago. Jens and I visited Rome, and we saw the Vatican and how weird it was. It's completely surrounded by these very tall walls. Like, I couldn't believe how tall the walls and the protection are. And they are definitely hiding stuff in the Vatican. And I'm sure many of you guys know that under the Vatican, there's literally, like, what is it, 35 miles of secret library archives?
Yeah, they have a lot of course, a lot of art that is stored there. I think they're probably one of the wealthiest because it's actually a nation. It's very tiny, but it's its own country. Like within Rome, it's really weird. Like you said, the high walls. It's they have a lot of gold. They have a lot of hidden history books, like the read the true history, old books. Like there is so much knowledge there, and I could feel when I was walking into the Vatican, it was weird because on one hand it's a place of like control, but I could feel like I was outside. It's hard to say, but I felt in the Vatican, I felt like as if I was outside of the Matrix a little bit, which
Mm,
feels weird, which is weird because the Vatican is a matrix in and of itself, right? But I could feel I
yeah.
was in a place where there is much more esoteric knowledge.
Hmm.
That's what I mean with outside of the matrix. I was in a place where there is much more esoteric knowledge and secret knowledge held about how reality works, how the world works, and they know it. And
Mm,
it's not meant for the common people. And that's what I was feeling as I was walking around there.
very, very interesting. So, yeah, I think Neptune, which rules things dissolving or losing power over the ninth house of the EU, could actually be the loss of power and influence of the Vatican. That because that, to my mind, I think is the biggest religious institution in the Europe. There's nothing bigger than the Vatican. The Vatican's very powerful. So that's going to be interesting to see what goes on with that. And also want to highlight some particular lunation dates coming up that I think will be a big deal for the European Union. On May 12th, 2025, we are going to have a full moon in Scorpio, our annual full moon in Scorpio, at 22 degrees, Capricorn degree, which Nicola Stoyanovich calls to kill or be killed degree. It's a very intense degree. And this full moon, 22 degrees Scorpio on May 12th, will be conjunct the natal Scorpio stellium, the Mars Pluto conjunction in the EU's chart. This is going to be a very intense lunation. We could literally see the death of someone prominent in Europe or somebody losing their power, multiple dramas going on. That can be Scorpio, things that have to do with hidden money, the money system, digital ID, also around this time, them trying to implement that. July 10th, we will have a full moon, 18 degrees of Capricorn, exactly conjunct the natal Uranus Neptune conjunction of the EU. So there's this theme of the EU is trying to roll out these ways of control, but none of them are going to work in the long term. And there's going to be some really big backlash. Ingrid says, I live in a region under Spanish rule. Spain has new rule. If you dare buy eggs from farmer and those eggs have no stamp, you both risk €2,000 fine. I mean, this stuff is so ridiculous, you guys. We live in a society under all of these rules, and this is not natural. This has only been going on for like the past 100 years. It's
That
ridiculous.
that would seem to me like an EU rule. That's like a typical EU rule. And I've there's this great quote, this great meme that I saw on the internet quite a few years ago, and it just popped into my mind. It's like it says, and I can't say it exactly, but it goes something like this. It's like the U.S. Constitution, 700 words, the Bible, 4,000 words, and then the EU regulations, the EU law, like 1,500,000 words. It's something like that. So
Oh,
that tells you something.
that's absolutely wild. It's just stupid, beyond stupid.
And maybe because we were talking about France a little bit and about Brigitte Macron, and there's also something happened with Le Pen actually, where Marine Le Pen, the presidential candidate, is actually because they caught her on some kind of fraud with European funds,
Mhm.
and she's actually barred from the presidential elections. Now, I truly believe Marine Le Pen isn't part of the establishment. That's why they do that to her. I mean, I think you can get something on any politician. If you dig deep enough, they're going to find something. And like, I'm not going to say that what she did was completely by the law, but then Christine Lagarde, which is kind of her colleague, also did something wrong. Also, did something wrong with funds. But
Mhm.
she became the head of the European Central Bank then afterwards. And Marine Le Pen can't become president. She's actually barred from presidential elections, and she appealed. She's going to go to trial again, but she can't appeal that she cannot be part of the elections anymore. So they actually totally barred her from it, which shows that they are afraid of it. And I don't know, Meg, if you have something on Marine Le Pen, if you can check it out or something.
Yeah, definitely. And just very briefly before I do that, just wanted to bring up, because I almost forgot, the European currency euro chart of the euro. So the euro currency, we look at the chart of January 24th, 1971 at midnight. This is when the euro was introduced. And this is interesting because the transit Pluto that we have is exactly conjunct the sun of the euro at the moment. So Pluto conjunct the sun. Pluto is the planet of death and transformation. So the euro could literally be dying at any moment. Pluto is exactly on its sun. And Aquarius rules technology, cryptocurrency, to be transformed into a digital currency. Literally shows that. So I think there's very intense and challenging things coming up for the euro, for sure. And then, sorry, what did you want to look at with Marine Le Pen? Just in general or any
Yeah,
specific?
just look at her chart and maybe if you can spot something, what's gonna happen to her. I don't know if you have time to look at her transits because it's a big story, of course, that she's been barred from the elections. It's kind of the same thing that happens here in Belgium. Is you have one party, and I'm not a fan of them because they were much too weak during the health crisis of 5 years ago. They were not really pushing back, so they lost their chance with me. But they're not part of the power structure. They've all also been barred, like something called the cordon sanitaire, which all other parties agreed not to work with them, even if they can form a majority government with them. So and same thing is happening with Marine Le Pen, but much more extreme because they've got her on something, and now they said you can never become president again. And she's of course the face. Of course, her party can continue, but she's the face of she's the face. She gained more and more traction because she's against immigration. I mean, there's so much immigration in France. People are just done with it. So it would be interesting if you can check it out and find something there.
So she is for sure not able to run again. She's not going to be able to run. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what they. She can't appeal, so she's not going to be able to run.
Okay. This is very interesting because, and is she going to have to go to jail? Because I remember you telling me the other day they were like trying to lock her up or something like that.
Yeah, she's got a sentence. So she's got a jail sentence,
Oh my God.
which may be, which may not turn out to be, actually going to jail, and maybe like how do you call it, like a band on your ankle, like
Hmm.
or like something like that, like home arrest or something. But
Hmm.
she appealed, so that part of the trial is gonna be done again, gonna be done over. So we'll see if she gets again like a jail sentence or not. But yeah, it's pretty intense.
Hmm. Yeah. So while all of this is going on for her right now, I mean, this has just been within the past couple weeks, correct? That this whole drama happened with her and they barred her and the threats of jail and all that. So this has all been going on while we've had this Mars in Cancer transit conjunct her natal Mars in the 10th house of career and our public reputation. So literally, she's literally going through that to go through a public attack Mars, to go through public conflict regarding her career, regarding her public reputation. And the 10th house also specifically in forms of career is politics, right? So she is a Leo conjunct Mercury with her sun conjunct Mercury in the 10th house. In Leo, that Leo and the 10th house both rule politicians. So she's a natural politician. And she's going through this time of conflict that's literally showing up in the chart. It's interesting because the recent lunar eclipse that we had, 23 degrees of Virgo, happened in her 12th house. And the 12th house of Pisces does rule jail, to be locked up. She's also got transit Neptune conjunct her natal Chiron. I think there actually may be a possibility here where they actually try to lock up Marine Le Pen. And I mean, if that were to happen, think about the crazy protests and revolution that would happen from that. I mean, there is an astrological potential that we may actually see her in jail for sure. She does have some positive stuff that's going to be coming up, though. Transit Jupiter in Cancer in Leo is going to be in her 10th house from September 11th to 2025 to October 31st, 2026. So this is like one of the best things you can have for your career life, Jupiter transiting over the 10th house. I think it's going to be pretty rocky for her until we get into September and October when Jupiter enters her 10th house. And then whether she may able to be, and I'm not an expert with, the French political situation, forgive me, you guys, but maybe there will be a possibility for her to run again, or positive standing in her political party that she can influence the future of what she's been involved with. Because did she actually start the political party that she's with, or is this just like the Conservative Party of France?
No, she didn't start it. Her father actually started it. He was kind of notorious. He was a lot more extreme than she was. She kind of toned down on a lot. Like her father was really anti, or like really strongly anti-immigration, very very, you know, extreme right almost in the beginning of his career. But Marine Le Pen made it more mainstream. But she's definitely because of her father. She's definitely not part of that power structure, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, so I think she's got some really intense things going on right now at the moment, but it's going to get better for her going into September, October, and I think we'll see a positive shift with that. But her natal north node is conjunct the moon of France's chart, and her natal moon falls in France's 10th house. So there's a destined connection. There may even be a karmic connection between her and the country of France, where she's actually helping to liberate France during this time. And she may receive help from foreign friends during this time until September, October, because she's got transit Jupiter going over the 9th house, which is the house of Jupiter. So I think foreign people will be very helpful for her that are on Team Freedom.
Interesting, interesting. It makes me think about, there's this party also in Holland, in the Netherlands, called FVD, Forum for Democracy, and in my opinion, they're also not really part of the power structure, because they've really been exposing Klaus Schwab, talking about it, even talking about Satanism in the parliament in Holland. So they're really going hard. So there is a movement in Europe. There is this movement in Europe, in different countries,
Mm-hmm.
that's really pushing back against the established order. Except in Belgium, I haven't seen something like that yet. And I actually went to speak, and I want to give them a shout out. The guys from SVD, they called, well, I won't say it in Dutch, but their name is SVD. And I actually was invited to speak for them, and they're just a starting party, but they are the ones, in my opinion, that gonna become bigger in Belgium, just like FVD in Holland, just like Marine Le Pen in France, that are pushing back against the establishment, that are not controlled opposition, because there's also some controlled opposition, like Geert Wilders, who
Yeah.
was supposedly anti-establishment in Holland, and then he turned out he's totally doing the same agenda. So yeah, so there is grassroots movements coming, and there is pushback in Europe, which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And you guys, sorry, I had like a Mercury retrograde moment, Mercury post shadow moment, because White Pill and On, you are correct. So I had there was a mistake in the chart that I brought up for the European currency. The euro was actually introduced January 1st, 1999. So the transit that's going on is in the euro chart. It's actually a Capricorn sun, not an Aquarius sun. But Pluto right now is right on the natal Neptune of the euro. And Neptune rules dissolving, loss of power. Pluto on Neptune could literally be the death of something, similar to Pluto on the sun. Sorry, you guys, I've looked at the chart there, but got confused. Some technical glitch happened. But yeah, it's showing pretty much the same thing within this accurate chart of the European currency, that there's going to be a major death and potential rebirth and push for a digital version of it. Interesting.
Yeah, that's like, let's hope that it doesn't. Let's hope that there is a lot of pushback, because when they start with digital money and programmable money, that's also why, as a Belgian, I keep speaking out about this, and I started speaking out 20 years ago about this, and then nobody was listening. But now a lot more people are awake, and a lot more people are listening, and there is really, I mean, if you saw the protests in Brussels, which was an international protest against the European Union, against these COVID measures all over Europe. I mean, there were people all over Europe in Brussels, because Brussels is actually the center of Europe, and it was a really to see all these people, the media of course downplayed it and said, oh, there's like only, like 15,000 people. There were like 100,000 people. It was amazing. So, when it matters, we're there to resist. We're there to resist. So, and I think I liked what you saw in the charts, Meg, is that it's going to fail. It's not going to work. It's going to resist, of course.
No.
And there's going to be something new and something much more beautiful and better, in my opinion, that will be born from this. But of course, that will not go without some birthing pains. And of course, the old system will try to grasp and clutch around itself, to take anybody with it. But although we might have some challenges, I am confident for the future. I don't subscribe to this dystopia. I mean, I think, people think that everybody needs to be awake, but that's not true. We need to be with a critical mass, and that's the most important thing. Uh, uh, Not a minority. I mean, I'm not talking about 1%, but if there's enough percentage of the public of Europe and actually the world, that is awake, that can actually act as a counterbalance to the most of the masses, if you want to use that word, that are not awake. So it's not that everybody has to be awake. There has to be enough awakened human consciousness to counterbalance those evil forces, and I believe that is going to be the case.
Hmm. I totally agree with you, for sure. I think there's very exciting things to come for the whole world and Europe. It's going to be definitely not boring for the next few months. And I think we're going to have to do a part 2 follow up.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're gonna be doing this show together like every week, right? We're gonna have different teams. So we're gonna do a weekly show together, guys. So stay tuned for our next one, I would say.
Yeah. And let us know in the comments what topics you'd like us to cover.
All right. So I guess we're at the end. Is there any last words you want to add, Meg?
I think I would say be prepared. Okay. I always go into the prepper thing. Be prepared, not because it's the end of the world, because we are in times where there are elites and forces that have literally been feeding off of our energy for thousands of years that are now losing that power. And they are going to try to stop in their own ways from this transformation and shift happening. So there is a possibility, even with Uranus at its fault in Taurus, sometimes we may have the power grid get shut down. And this is just an astrological possibility. Okay, not saying for sure, but there could be times where, if there's really huge protests going on and everybody freaking like is awake at the same time and pissed off about what's going on. We've seen in different countries when that's happened, they've shut the power off so that people can't communicate. So just being prepared for things like that possibly happening. What kind of advice would you give at this time, being from actually Europe?
I would say do not play into fear. Just live your life and live it with zest and live it with happiness. I know the digital ID. F it. That's what I say. If they introduce it, I don't care. Like some people really freak out. Oh my God, digital ID is coming, but they want us in fear. They want us to feel powerless, and we actually, the more we are in happiness, the more we feel empowered, the more we're counteracting their system of control. Actually, it's about your state of consciousness, and it's good to be aware, and it's good to be aware of the conspiracies, but don't let the awareness of the conspiracies bring you down. That's where the spiritual side comes in, and you have to have a positive outlook. You don't want to feel disempowered, because if you're aware of the conspiracy, but you're believing that their plan is going to work, and you're being negative about it, and you think we're lost, and you think we're all going to get ruled and we're all going to go to hell, well, then you're not in a better space than somebody who was asleep.
Right.
It's maybe a little bit strong words that I say here, but it is like that. We can't. Your frequency determines everything, and your thoughts determine your frequency. So be aware of also focusing on the positive in life, and be aware of the control that is playing, but balance it out, with a positive mindset, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. That's very, very good advice. And when I'm bringing up the power possibly going out, I'm just like, I don't think that's going to be long term. I think that would be a very temporary thing. Just being prepared for it's crazy
Yeah.
times, right?
I mean, if there's a power outage, I mean, I had a power outage here 3 years ago, and it was amazing. Like when the electricity goes away, I have to say, there's like a magic happening. I'm really surprised at how much electricity is actually influencing the energy of our spaces, and it's only when the electricity falls away that you're like, there was. I remember it was one evening and the electricity was gone, and it was like there was like a magic. But of course, I live in the countryside. It may be different in the city. That's of course true, but there was like a magic to it. You light some candles, and everything. Don't go into fear. Everything will be fine.
Hmm. Yes.
All right, so we are at the end of this episode. So don't forget to subscribe to both our channels and like and share this stuff if you like it. And I'll guess we'll see you on another episode next week. Bye bye.
Bye.